You're talking about like billions of dollars of capital, real construction, power contracts. Difficulty cannot keep up with the pace of velocity in which Bitcoin price can move. And that's why when you're mining, when you get these price rips, you have these windows of exceptionally high returns, right? Like what we're seeing right now. And I think it's going to increase. There's also a lot of innovation. Machines are becoming more efficient. These leaps in efficiency are not as great from a percentage gain, which is actually fantastic for folks who are, currently mining Bitcoin, right? Because you're not going to get squeezed out with like way more efficient machines. But generally, just like I love seeing how scrappy Bitcoin miners are. You see like heat capture type stuff. I was speaking at a conference in Amsterdam, and there's like heat capture for tulip gardens, right? Like for giant greenhouses. So from a Blockware perspective, we've seen significant traction with our marketplace because of that value add of liquidity. I think that is going to continue to accelerate, especially if we had what we had in 2021, where there's significant demand for machines. You start to get like a bit of a supply shock. So if we get a Bitcoin rip and that's going to create incremental demand for machines. There's not like a bazillion machines, right? Eventually the limit does exist. You can only manufacture them so quickly. And then if you're sitting on spot Bitcoin mining rigs and that price just goes absolutely through the roof, right? So I think we're walking into that kind of situation, and it's going to be largely catalyzed by really bullish macro setup on a forward-looking basis.
Welcome to another episode of Cypherpunk'd, where we explore money's history, crypto's future, and Web3's role in advancing human rights, freedom, and digital liberty. Today, we're joined by my friend Danny Condon, Chief Revenue Officer at Blockware Solutions, a leader in Bitcoin mining. With a background in scaling enterprise software and a sharp eye for innovation, Danny has helped Blockware sell over 300,000 mining rigs. Known for challenging conventional wisdom and sharing sharp insights on mining economics, Danny brings a unique perspective on the future of Bitcoin mining. Not only that, Danny, congratulations on becoming a father and bringing your beautiful daughter Lux into the world.
Hey, thanks, Maddie.
Doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, no, really appreciate that. Certainly exciting times.
So, Danny, why don't you give us a little brief background on your transition from like working in SaaS and enterprise software to Bitcoin? I know we've talked about this before in the past, but for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's kind of one and the same for my Bitcoin journey. So going back to probably 2017. So I guess take one step back. So I spent almost a decade in enterprise software, primarily in sales, helped scale a business basically from 0 to, 10, 3 separate private equity transactions. I worked there, I ran sales there, and Mason Japa, the founder and CEO of Blockware, ran solution engineering. So he and I became buddies. We did a bunch of deals together. 2017, I get a nice commission check, and he's like, dude, you got to buy this Bitcoin. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what that is. Let's roll. And, kind of like, I feel like everybody's got that moment where you just, it's almost like a gamble at the beginning kind of thing.
Get some skin in the game.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, all right, this is pretty awesome. Fast forwarding to 2020, that's when I really started, doing the work. Blockware was starting to take off a bit. Mason went full time at Blockware, and fast forwarding a little more, 2020, I was like, I'm the best trader of all time because we printed all this money and I'm just going long into, tech earnings, like out of the money calls kind of thing. But I just started to realize like, this is artificial and it's just, you put more money in the system. So fast forwarding, really started to learn about Bitcoin.
You ever see that I think it's like you see what your stimulus check is worth now in Bitcoin?
Yeah, right? I know, it's wild.
Like you would have put the 1,200 or whatever, however much they gave everybody. You would have put that like directly into Bitcoin. It's now worth like 20,000 or 12,000, something crazy. Yeah.
So I think 2020 was like transition point for me. And, frankly, I think a lot of people. And then Mason was like, hey, dude, we're going to go build a rocket ship, and I want you to help me, steer it, maneuver it. I've been jamming with our buddy Paul here about interstellar travel. So I think that's a relevant, spin. But yeah, so started full-time at Blockware 2021, and, it's been a pretty epic journey.
I'm a big fan of you guys, and you know that because we work together on some stuff. So
Yeah, right on.
big fan of Blockware. I saw your tweet about Bitcoin and cold storage. It was something like it's not the only pious way to do Bitcoin. That's a spicy one.
Yeah,
Let's unpack that.
It is. No, I like that. So I think that Bitcoin is disruptive technology, and if you look at disruptive technology adoption curves, it's like a hockey stick. You look at the internet, you look at the cell phone, so on and so forth, and it's all about this concept of adoption. And if you unpack that a little bit more, you can't adopt something unless you're educated on something, and you can't be educated on something unless you're aware of something. So I see, a variety of custodial solutions that enable adoption to accelerate, right? And personally, I'm a big fan of cold storage, and that's how I custody, the majority of my Bitcoin. But I think if you're talking to your uncle at, Christmas dinner kind of thing, and it's like, hey, you can go into your Fidelity account and you can buy, Bitcoin ETF, which I look at as like a custodial solution. So I think that you can't jump in. You certainly can, but it's hard to jump right into the deep end of something.
Yeah, no, yeah. I agree with you completely. I actually don't think it's smart for people to go right to cold storage. Like, I think it's smart to get some skin in the game on like maybe a custodial wallet on Coinbase or through an IRA or in a an ETF wrapper, just to like kind of start monitoring it, learning about it, seeing the price change, understand, read some business reports. But yeah, a lot of people come to our meetup that went right into the deep end.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I sent my words to some some random guy in India or whatever country, and I got scammed. Essentially, I lost all my funds. So that's a hard lesson to learn. And I think if you go the proper channel, you start slow, you start to understand and learn, I think it's going to be a lot better for you in the long run. And also, each type of custody presents a different has a different risk, right?
Exactly.
So, a self-custodial solution is you're the risk, right? Whether you bump your head or you lose your words or, you get socially engineered, like I just mentioned. So I like to have different buckets and baskets, and some over here, some in there, some in my Roth IRA. I think that's a better, more holistic approach to the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's diversification, right? Yeah. And that's it's a way to mitigate risk. And I think it's all about adoption. Levels of risk. Yeah. Exactly. And this just facilitates, greater velocity of adoption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do that with a lot of people that come to our Bitcoin meetup. We kind of, we try to help them learn and progress. And ultimately the goal is to have, self-custody in cold storage, but it's a learning journey, and we don't really recommend that right out the gate. We teach dollar cost average, kind of get involved. And then when it's an amount that is very significant, then we move on to the next step. Let's take a little over to cold storage. Let's learn about these words and the seed phrase and the cryptography behind it.
Yeah. So. I mean, we're talking about babies. You're not going to come out of the womb and start sprinting. You got to crawl, you got to walk, you got to run. So the more solutions there are to enable that journey and that evolution, I think it's a good thing for Bitcoin.
I couldn't agree more. Let's move on to the mining section of things. What's the craziest thing you've learned about industrial mining that most people just they get completely wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think just going and visiting a Bitcoin mining data center, which I could not more strongly encourage folks to do. It's going to sound a little strange, but it's simultaneously like the most overwhelming and kind of underwhelming thing at the same time, where you see, the power density of these machines, of these data centers. And these are like generally tier 0 data centers. I've been in tier 3, Equinix data centers type stuff. So I broadly, just like the sheer magnitude of the energy, the noise, the heat, and it's like the wind. I mean, yeah, it's so real. I think that's kind of the thing of like, Bitcoin gets a lot of pokes like, oh, there's nothing back, and it's like, dude, go to a Bitcoin mining data center, and you're going to see unbelievable tangibility.
Yeah. You'll understand that energy that's behind that network supporting that thing.
Exactly.
Providing that security at just industrial levels, right?
Yeah, totally.
You mentioned something fascinating about Bitcoin price, how it can teleport. It'll take mining a while to catch up. I think this is something, if you've been through a couple cycles, you and I kind of intuitively know this. But why don't you unpack that for everybody listening?
Yeah, no, that's a great topic. So the concept here is there's basically two vectors that affect Bitcoin mining profitability. The first is Bitcoin price. The second is hash rate, on the network. So as more hash rate comes on, difficulty increases, miners are rewarded with incrementally less Bitcoin. So those are the two levers. Now, if you look at those levers, the concept is the velocity at which those two, different levers can move. The velocity in which Bitcoin price can move, and it's a two-way street. Bitcoin price can go up, Bitcoin price can go down. Exceptionally bullish, especially right now. We're sitting here, late January, right, mid-January. So let's look at like since the election, like Bitcoin's up probably 60+%, and difficulty is up, maybe 20%. So that spread is significantly beneficial for the economics of Bitcoin mining, and that's after 7 consecutive positive difficulty increases.
To just say, we've just seen, that's never really happened before.
Yeah, so the speed in which Bitcoin price can move far outpaces the speed in which incremental hash rate can be added to the market, just based on like Moore's law. You're talking about like billions of dollars of capital, real construction, power contracts. Difficulty cannot keep up with the pace, of velocity in which Bitcoin price can move. And that's why when you're mining, when you get these price rips, you have these windows of exceptionally high returns, right? Like what we're seeing right now. And I think it's going to increase.
I hope it does. It does. Yeah. So just to unpack that, we get a nation state that, and say, hey, we're going to add that. We're going to have a Bitcoin strategic reserve. I hope it's the United States, and I think it will be.
Sure.
Instantly the price goes up 50% in a couple days, right? Maybe $1 trillion pours into that asset. You can't just instantly produce 50% more, hash rate. You can't just throw up 50% more data centers.
Exactly. We're talking about
take years, and as that network grows, it's exponentially almost. It's so much more deployment to add to that infrastructure.
Yeah,
and it's a lagging. The hash rate's going to be lagging the price, right?
Exactly. Hash rate. And even like you look at 2021 was a exceptionally high return, time period for Bitcoin mining, and then Bitcoin price kind of went down in 2022. Obviously, difficulty went up during that period, as on the back of significant investments that were made in 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
Right. So it takes years to catch up. And when you've got that sort of imbalance of velocity, you want to be positioned mining in advance of that, because that's when you're the biggest winner.
Of course. No doubt. Yeah. That's, it's like, it's just like any kind of market, right? It's like, everybody wants to buy when the price goes up, right? But, the smart money is dollar cost averaging and buying. Nobody's paying attention, and when the price is low,
exactly. And Bitcoin mining is, in my humble opinion, the best way to dollar cost average Bitcoin.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more. We're watching all these Wall Street guys pile into Bitcoin with ETFs, and now that we just kind of talked about this. There's countries potentially stacking sats. What's your gut telling you about how this changes things for miners?
I think that generally this is like number go up, and again, just go back to adoption. Right? Like, and look at the adoption curve. Go, Google like disruptive technology adoption curve. It's a hockey stick, right? So the ETF, for example, is a very seamless way that incremental folks can adopt Bitcoin. Very low friction. You go to your Fidelity account, go open your IRA, buy, right? So I think as you get all these, as you get easier on-ramps effectively to adopt Bitcoin, you have more people adopting Bitcoin, and as more people are buying Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin goes up. So I think that we're in like the second inning of, a 9-inning game kind of thing right now. And, with some of the just macro setup as we go into this, like this thing could rip.
Yeah. I think people are underestimating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Full disclosure here, I bought a bunch of MicroStrategy options, a bunch of calls. Because, I'm just gambling on the total gamble, but just, if things really play out how we think they might here, we get a strategic reserve announcement, something crazy. I mean, that could really, and people don't fully understand, this how things could change, I guess, in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
This Bitcoin is this absolutely scarce asset, and nation states will fully put that to bear. If they decide to say, hey, we're going to accumulate here.
Yeah, think about this. One way to round this out is we have simultaneous retail adoption, institutional adoption, and then potentially nation state adoption.
Yeah, I didn't think that third domino was coming this cycle.
And if that happens,
seems like it will be.
I mean, you can't price that in. It's kind of a popular thing to say, it's not priced in, you're not bullish enough, but you're really not. You get that level of adoption, these are entities that can literally print currency and go buy this.
Do you remember those guys? I think it was who were those guys who came up with that whole super cycle thing, and they took everybody's money and rehypothecated it and gambled it long or some kind of crazy thing. I think they might actually be right, but I just think the timing of them might be wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What are those guys' names? Suzu or something?
Yeah, right.
Cal Davies. It sounds about something like that. I don't know exactly. I can't remember, but yeah, they came up with this whole super cycle thesis, and I think we could actually see it, potentially, right? I mean, I think if nation states come and wade into the water, I think all bets are off.
I mean, there's no crystal ball. You can just try to read the tea leaves, and the tea leaves are saying we're in for a treat here.
Couldn't agree more. Let me ask you a little bit more about miners. What do you've obviously worked with publicly traded companies, you've worked with individual miners, myself included.
Sure.
So what do you see? What advantages do you see for smaller miners compared to, a large publicly traded company?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is tell you a little bit about Blockware. You're familiar, but for listeners, we're a mining as a service company. So we own and operate data centers, and we sell Bitcoin mining ASICs to individual and institutional, capital allocators. What does that mean? It means we make it possible for anyone to mine Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin mining is, it is challenging. You're talking about power contracts, energy, hardware, software, maintenance. So for the ordinary individual who doesn't have the capital or time or appetite to go about that journey themselves, but wants to get access to the opportunity that is Bitcoin mining, we're that perfect option, right? And I think that we enable folks to be extremely agile in their mining, right? It's mining as a service. It's totally hands off. You get the good stuff. You don't have to worry about the bad stuff. We take care of that for you. And then additionally, we have a marketplace, which you're familiar with. So if you think about,
tell me what this is. I've never.
Yeah, right.
I've never heard of a marketplace.
Yeah.
I'm used to just messaging a random stranger on Telegram and just YOLOing hundreds of thousands of dollars into the ether.
Yeah, totally.
Hoping it's all gonna work out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of why Blockware was founded, to eliminate that counterparty risk and make Bitcoin mining accessible to, really to everyone. But if you think about it, I'll kind of set this up a little bit. Bitcoin mining has historically been looked at as a large capex up front, which is otherwise than a sunk cost. It's a dividend paying investment over X number of years, right? There hasn't been liquidity in that asset side of the investment. And now with our marketplace, we provide our clients with the option, but not obligation, to have the ability to sell those machines. And those machines have a tangible value. Again, Bitcoin mining rigs, the simplest way to think about them, they're like dividend paying assets, right? And again, without liquidity, that asset has a paper value, right? But as that dividend increases, it's logical to think that the price of that machine would increase. Isn't
That's
it?
exactly what we see.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and we're sitting here talking about the velocity in which Bitcoin price can move, how that's bullish for Bitcoin miners, it's bullish for anybody who's positioned in mining Bitcoin. If your machine goes up significantly in value, there's an opportunity to capitalize on that. And what we saw going back to last cycle, S19J Pros, those are the bee's knees, 2020, they went from $2,000 to $12,000 a machine at the peak of November 2021. I know
people who paid $15,000 for those machines.
Yeah, exactly. And we're sitting here right now with the latest and greatest machines. It's easier to just do a $1 per terahash denomination because the machines have become more efficient. They're $30 per terahash. if we get this rip that we're talking about,
Explain that what that means for our listeners, because a lot of people we're gonna be like, what the heck, $30 per terahash? What does that even mean?
Yeah, exactly. So there's basically two levers in Bitcoin mining, or ways to think about it. The revenue side is terahash computations per second. So the more terahash you have in a machine, the more Bitcoin that you will mine.
The more powerful the machine is.
The more powerful the machine is, exactly. And then you have watts per terahash, right? And the lower that number, the more energy efficient the machine is. So you want to have the most output with the least amount of energy consumption, because your cost side of the equation is basically energy, especially if you're mining with Blockware. That's really your only cost. So anyways, like rounding that out, if we see what we saw last cycle, machines go from $30 per T to $120 per T. And by the way, that whole time you're mining Bitcoin, accumulating Bitcoin, which in that example will significantly increase in value. So you get like double exposure with a hedged downside protection when you're mining Bitcoin.
I love it. I love it. Let's fast forward to 2025. Where do you think mining's heading this year? What are you excited about?
I'm excited.
What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, right. I mean, beating a dead horse, but I'm excited about like the economic opportunity on a forward-looking basis, because I think that Bitcoin is going to rip, and it's impossible for difficulty to keep up with it. So that's probably the part that I'm most excited about. There's also a lot of innovation, from a tech perspective. Machines are becoming more efficient. These leaps in efficiency are not as great from a percentage gain, which is actually fantastic for folks who are, currently mining Bitcoin, right? Because you're not going to get squeezed out with like way more efficient machines, or I don't think so. But generally, just like I love seeing how scrappy Bitcoin miners are. You see like heat capture type stuff. I mean, I remember I was speaking at a conference in Amsterdam like a couple of years ago, I think, and there's like heat capture for tulip gardens, right? Like for giant greenhouses. So I'm excited to see the scrappiness of Bitcoin miners. And, from a Blockware perspective, we've seen significant traction with our marketplace because of, that value add of liquidity. I think that is going to, continue to accelerate, especially if we had what we had in 2021, where there's significant demand for machines. You start to get like a bit of a supply shock. Mm-hmm. So if we get a Bitcoin rip and that's going to create incremental demand for machines. There's not like a bazillion machines, right? Eventually the limit does exist. You can only manufacture them
there's
so quickly.
There.
And then if you're sitting on spot Bitcoin mining rigs and, that price just goes absolutely through the roof, right? So I think we're walking into that kind of situation, and it's going to be largely catalyzed by just a really bullish macro setup on a forward-looking basis.
No, I'm seeing that as well. I'm reading the tea leaves, and incoming administration extremely bullish. Like got the right people in the right places. Bunch of pro crypto smart guys. Treasury Secretary example, Scott Bessent. Commerce Secretary, I believe, Howard Lutnick. These are very intelligent, smart people that Trump is putting in very important places. We'll have a new SEC chair, a new FDIC. I mean, couldn't have a better macro setup in my mind, with competent people finally coming in that are pro innovation, pro technology, and that want to have America be great again. I guess is the way to fucking say it.
They make hats that say that, right?
Hats do say that, and the past 4 years have been pretty terrible, pretty hard.
Yeah. Well, I think
as a company that operates in the space,
I
don't know if you guys have been debanked or what you've dealt with on your end. But
it's been like trying to swim with anvils around your ankles, right? So, I mean, you and I were on a podcast, a month or so ago together, and yes, these are all like super bullish things, but it's important to realize that we're not going from like 0 to 1. We're going from like -10 to 1. Yeah. It's not just that this is better. We're replacing like significant obstacles with like godsend opportunities. Right?
I know, it's pretty crazy.
So that swing is significant.
Like we've had a hurricane, in our face the past 4 years, and now it's like the opposite. We've got like a jet engine at our back. So
we're going from headwinds to tailwinds. There you go. Exactly.
That's the way to say it.
Yeah.
We don't have too much time because we're going to hop on this roundtable pod soon, but we got some guests waiting. But I'm going to ask you a fun question, and then we'll do a couple personal questions, and we'll wrap it up.
Right on.
So I think you were talking to Paul a little bit earlier. You guys were talking about different planets, and you said, I think you told him that it was possible you think your daughter could live on a different planet someday. I always like to look to the future. How do you see Bitcoin playing out? You know, if we become a multiplanetary species, like how is the blockchain going to synchronize on different planets? Would we use Bitcoin here? Would there be a different currency on a different planet because you need that real-time updates? I mean, what are your thoughts? This is some we're way out there.
Yeah, no, we're way out there.
So we're out in the ether right now. But
yeah, I mean, wow, that's one. So to give some context to that tweet, like I've got a 7-week-old daughter, and I was just thinking, I was looking like, okay, what do they call this? Generation Alpha, Generation Beta? Like, wow, we're really out there now. And I'm thinking like, there's certainly a non-0% chance that my daughter will visit and or live a different planet in her lifetime.
Yeah, that's
right?
wild.
So I think like staying away from like the technicalities of how exactly that will work, Bitcoin is, Paul and I have been jamming about this amongst other things, including interstellar travel. Bitcoin is a level playing field. It's a universal money, right? And that's what we basically need in order to have an interplanetary, human existence, right? You have to have that like permissionless, borderless, whatever country, or global planet borderless kind of thing. So Bitcoin is actually the perfect currency to have, commodity currency, whatever you want to call it, for facilitating commerce amongst, an interplanetary existence, which is wild to say out loud, but it's like Paul and I were talking also, we're going to accomplish more from an innovation perspective in the next probably 20 to call it 50 years than we have in the last, million years.
That's fucking
right?
Insane.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And it's the pace of innovation.
I think it's like Kurzweil's law, I believe. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Paul, do me a favor, look that up, pull that up. I think it's called Kurzweil's law, what he's describing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild.
Well, he pulls that up. I think it's Ray Kurzweil. So RayKurzweil maybe. There's Moore's law, but there it is. Kurzweil's law of accelerating returns. Ray Kurzweil, a futurist. I'm gonna throw it up on the screen for us to read.
Right on. Here we go.
Pretty cool. There we go. Ray Kurzweil, a futurist, extends the principle beyond semiconductors to technology in general. So he's talking about Moore's law. So he's actually, Moore's law is like with semiconductors and computer chips, but he's saying in general, things are going to accelerate rapidly here. He posits that evolutionary processes, including technological advancement, progress exponentially rather than linearly. This means that technological progress accelerates because each new technology provides a platform to further faster innovation.
Yeah, exactly. We're basically using like more efficient tools to innovate, which compounds it and enables the velocity of innovation to be just extraordinarily fast.
Paul, do me a favor, go back to that one more time because I want to go over. I saw below it was Metcalfe's law, which is something that people who are into Bitcoin extremely important. It's right above. No, it's above there. Yeah, Metcalfe's law. So Metcalfe's law is the law of like network technologies, and Bitcoin is a prime example of this. This law pertains to network technologies, suggesting that the value of a network is proportional to the square of the number of connected users of the system. It explains how the utility and thus the innovation in network technologies like the internet accelerate as more people join the network. So what this is essentially saying is that when Bitcoin goes from 10 users to 20 users, it just doubled the number of users. You'd think the network would be worth twice as much. But the actual answer is it's not worth twice as much. It's worth 20 times as much because now there's so many more connections between those 20 people that could be formed than just, double the connections that could be formed between 10 people.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you're like 10xing the connections because 20 people can form so many more connections and the network just kind of grows exponentially. And this is actually played out largely if you look at Bitcoin's price, best performing asset in all of human history, and it's Bitcoin money is a network. It's the first social network. So it's a beautiful example. So if you're interested in learning more about that, Paul put the link to those different laws of networks because they're really, really cool. So different laws like Kurzweil's law, Moore's law, Metcalfe's law, 3 really important things to do a little research on and understand. let me ask you a little bit of personal questions here, Danny.
Fire.
All right. If you could go back in time 20 years, what would you tell yourself? What one piece of advice would you give yourself?
Oh man. So 35, so 15-year-old kid. I mean, so it sounds kind of cliche, but like take risks, manage risk and take risks, right? Because, at any point in time, you think like, people can get overwhelmed. Man, I got all these responsibilities, but then like you get older and you get more and more and more responsibility. That's just kind of how life generally is. And the time, I work with a lot of, early to mid 20-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you don't have a whole lot of like overhead, in a lot of interpretations of that word. So get out there and take risks.
Calculated risk taking. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And then just fucking adventure, man. I think that like life is for living, and just get out there and experience things and, drink the wild honey, man.
So that brings me to my next question, which is, outside of the Bitcoin world, what's something that you're passionate about that people might not know about?
Yeah. I live in Colorado. I love to ski. Skiing is something that I'm, super passionate about. I like to read. I like a lot of fiction novels. And I mean, I just said like, go adventure. I love to adventure. The thing that brings me, the most joy is just like being out on the edge, just adventuring, experiencing the unknown, seeing different cultures, tasting different foods. I just have a passion for, adventure and living life.
I love it. These are some great answers. Let's do a little bit of actionable advice at the very end here. So if someone's listening right now and they're interested in mining, understanding mining, what are the 3 things that you wish someone had told you when you started?
Oh, okay. Well, one, I'll kind of take this in stride. So I think one is like, just get off zero, right? We talk about like get off zero with Bitcoin, get off zero Bitcoin mining rigs. Just buy one Bitcoin mining rig and just learn, right? Go through one monthly cycle. You're going to get a bill, right? And your revenue is going to exceed what your bill is. And just kind of like learn and soak that in. That's one. 2 would be, I'm kind of looking from a Blockware perspective is really like take the time to understand and explore the utility of our marketplace. I can't emphasize or overemphasize how beneficial it is to have this dynamic of, the option to have liquidity in Bitcoin mining. And then the third, which is kind of a piggyback on that, is come up with your own like mining kind of treasury management strategy. So me personally, my objective is to accumulate the most Bitcoin that I possibly can, right? And I don't care what the price is right now. So I like to buy Bitcoin mining rigs into Bitcoin price strength. Like we're at $106,000 Bitcoin right now. We'll watch this in a year and be like, wow, we're at $376,000 Bitcoin price, right?
Yeah.
Personally, I like to buy Bitcoin mining rigs, which are generally priced in dollars with Bitcoin because I have more buying power. And then it seems counterintuitive, but I like to sell Bitcoin mining rigs into weakness because again, buyers are looking at it on a dollarized basis. So if Bitcoin price, goes down, I'm able to get more Bitcoin, right? And then I just, I'm selling Bitcoin mining rigs at $92,000 Bitcoin, and then it cranks back up to $106,000 Bitcoin, and then I'm buying Bitcoin. So I think like buy a rig, check it out, understand the utility of the marketplace, and then come up with a treasury strategy that works for you, and then just be disciplined and go get it.
Execute.
Yeah, exactly. And really like we do a lot of the executing, frankly, from a twisting, but it's like there's stuff that you can do as well as can be exceptionally passive investment, basically, but you can, have some sort of activity there that would, it would benefit you.
It's a fantastic way to dollar cost average. So we always, at our local meetup, when people want to get into mining, they have a little bit of money, they want to dabble. We always say, hey, just go to Blockware Marketplace, check it out. Buy one rig. You'll see what you need to do. The security deposit. There's this. There's you learn about it.
Yeah.
Understand. You can look at the pool page. See the funds. See the Bitcoin coming in and being deposited to your wallet. Right. You can see all these things, and it's that's how you learn. Right.
Yeah.
And then you're like at the end of the month. Okay, I've made this much Bitcoin. Oh, I've got to pay my bill, my hosting bill, which is essentially for the electricity, right, and the management. You send the bill. So it's a good way to get hands on. And to get your first taste of what it's all about.
And I think like to round that out too, from an education standpoint, like just to put in perspective, like what you're doing when you're mining Bitcoin, you're effectively arbitraging energy. Your revenues will exceed your costs. It's kind of the setup. Right now, the most efficient Bitcoin mining rigs are creating Bitcoin at like $43,000 a Bitcoin. So when you're mining Bitcoin, you are constantly, every second, you are accumulating Bitcoin. And if you're with that setup, and that might be, there's a number of different ways you can get set up, but you're literally buying Bitcoin at like over a 50% discount, a 60-something% discount. And it's not magic. It's like very real, and it's very attainable.
Love that. Let's close out there.
Yeah, right on.
Danny Condon, been a pleasure.
Always, Maddie.